The sky was quiet over planet G57, a dusty red world far from Earth. Human Scout Levi was on patrol, riding his small rover over rocky ground. Suddenly, the air cracked with a loud boom. A flash of green light streaked across the sky and slammed into a distant hill. The ground shook under his rover's wheels, sending a cloud of dust flying into the air. Levi stopped the rover and grabbed his scanner. Something had crashed, and it wasn't a meteor. The signal coming from the crash site was strange. Not machine, not alive, but something in between. He drove quickly toward it, heart racing, hand on his sidearm. Whatever it was, it didn't belong to any human ship. As he reached the site, Levi saw smoke rising from a cracked pod half buried in red sand. The pod pulsed with faint blue light, and strange vines were growing around it, vines that didn't match any known plant life. He stepped out slowly, boots crunching on the gravel. Then he saw her, a girl, or something like a girl, lay curled at the base of the broken pod. She had pale lavender skin, long dark hair, and silver lines glowing softly across her arms and legs. She was unconscious, her chest rising slowly. But what made Levi freeze was something else. Her body was off. She had 2 arms, 2 legs, and a face like a human. But there was a third shape on her back. It looked like part of her, but it moved slightly, like it had a mind of its own. Levi didn't know what it was, and he didn't want to guess. He knelt beside her, touched her shoulder gently, to his surprise. Her eyes opened bright teal, glowing faintly in the shadows. She looked at him, confused, then whispered something in a language he didn't understand. Her voice was soft but strange, like it echoed from somewhere far away. "I'm not going to hurt you," Levi said, raising both hands slowly. She blinked, trying to focus on his face. Then her body jerked, and she groaned in pain. Levi quickly picked her up, careful of the strange third part on her back. It felt warm and slightly pulsing under his hand. He placed her in the rover and sped back to his outpost. Along the way, he kept looking at her in the rear mirror. She lay still, whispering words he couldn't understand. Then, suddenly, she spoke. In perfect English, "You're not ready to know what I am," she said. Levi nearly crashed the rover in shock. "What?" he asked, looking back, but she had passed out again, her body twitching slightly, at the outpost. Levi sneaked her into the private bedroom. He didn't report the crash, not yet. He knew if command found her, they'd take her away and lock her in some lab. He couldn't let that happen, not until he knew what she was. The scanner ran over her body, humming softly. Her vitals were strange 3 heartbeats, all at different rhythms. Her blood had tiny lights moving inside it. Like fireflies, the scanner beeped with confusion and flashed a message, "Unknown. Anatomy detected." One area of the scan was redacted. No details. Just a warning. Inconclusive third structure, do not probe. Levi stared at the screen, confused and curious. What was this third part? Why did the machine refuse to scan it? He looked at her again, now sleeping under a silver blanket. Her breathing was steady, but she twitched now and then. Suddenly, she whispered again, but this time her voice was deeper. A third ... hidden ... Don't let them take it. Levi leaned in closer, heart pounding. "What is the third?" he asked, but she didn't answer, just turned her head slowly and whispered, "Ask again when you're brave." The room grew cold for no reason, and the lights flickered. Levi stepped back, unsure what to believe anymore. Was she really just some alien girl, or was she something far more complex? One thing was sure, he had found something the universe didn't want him to find. And now it was in his care. Levi couldn't sleep that night. The alien girl lay silent in the bedroom, glowing faintly under the scanner's soft light. The room felt heavy, like something invisible was watching from the corners every time Levi closed his eyes. He saw the message on the screen repeating again and again. Inconclusive third structure, do not probe. It didn't feel like a medical alert. It felt like a warning. He walked slowly toward her, his boots making no sound on the floor. She looked peaceful now, breathing slow, almost like a human girl. But when he placed his hand near her chest, he felt it again. The third heartbeat. The first beat was soft and slow, like a human's. The second one was faster, like a frightened animal. And the third was wrong. It pulsed in a rhythm that didn't belong in nature. It felt like a clock ticking backwards, like it didn't want to be known. Levi stepped back, his skin cold. He had been in war zones, seen creatures with claws and acid breath. But this girl made him nervous in a way he couldn't explain. Not because she looked dangerous, but because she felt incomplete. Like a puzzle with one twisted piece. In the morning, she sat up without help. She didn't speak, just stared at him with glowing teal eyes. He brought her some water, and she took it with both hands, sniffing it before sipping carefully. Then she looked at him and tilted her head. You are Levi, she said slowly. Her voice echoed like it came from her chest and from somewhere else at the same time. He nodded. That's right, and you are. She looked down, her lips tightening. I don't remember my given name, she whispered. Only that I'm the last carrier. He frowned. Carrier of what? She touched her back, the place where the strange third shape rested. This, she said simply. The third. Levi swallowed. You mean the thing the scanner can't read? She nodded once. It's not for machines. Then she looked him straight in the eyes. And not for most minds. He didn't know what to say. He was trained to deal with alien tech. Broken ships, hostile creatures. But this felt more like magic than science. She wasn't just an alien, she was a message someone had tried to erase. And now that message was sitting on his bed, speaking perfect English. Later, he walked her around the outpost. She moved carefully. Like gravity was unfamiliar to her when they passed near the communications tower. She suddenly stopped and grabbed his arm. Her fingers were cold, yet her grip was strong. She pointed to the tower, then whispered, They're listening, Levi. Looked around. Who's they? She didn't answer, just stared at the blinking light atop the antenna. Then she muttered, If they know I'm awake, they'll come for the third. Levi asked again, What is the third? She looked at him, her voice trembling. It's what I was never meant to keep. That night, Levi stayed awake near her door, rifle across his lap. He couldn't explain it. But he felt something creeping closer, not footsteps, but a pressure. In the air, at exactly 3 a.m., the lights flickered. A low hum came from the outside. The sensors picked up no ships, no signals, just static. Then came a whisper from the medroom, not hers, but something. Inside her, it wasn't words, but a sound that made Levi's bones ache. He rushed into the room, found her standing by the window, her back to him. Her third shape was glowing now. Like it was awake, it twitched and pulsed, not like flesh, not like metal, but like thought. She turned to him slowly, her eyes wider than before. They've sent shadows, she said calmly. I need to hide the third. Levi stepped forward, trying to understand. Hide it where? He asked. This base isn't safe. She nodded. Not even your planet is safe. Then she placed her hand on his chest. For a moment, Levi felt a burning sensation under his skin, like something was moving into him. He gasped and stumbled back. What did you do? He cried. She lowered her hand and whispered, I gave it to you for now. The room fell silent, and somewhere, outside the stars, something ancient had just noticed Levi's name. The ground didn't shake, but Levi's heart did. All night he kept hearing echoes that didn't come from outside, but from deep inside his chest. The alien girl had placed her hand on him and said she hid the third inside him. He wanted to believe it was just a dream, but something inside his body now beat out of sync. It wasn't pain, but a strange pressure. Like someone knocking from behind his ribs. The girl hadn't spoken again. She sat silently by the window. Watching the stars through the dusty glass, her teal eyes blinked slowly, and the strange shape on her back no longer glowed. But Levi could tell she was listening to things he couldn't hear. The silence between them was no longer empty. It was heavy, alive. The night was dark, too dark. The sky over planet G57 usually shimmered with twin moons and asteroid trails, but tonight clouds rolled in thick, unnatural, almost oily. Static hummed in the air like invisible insects, and the outpost lights began to flicker without reason. That's when Levi saw it. A figure moved just beyond the outer fence. It didn't walk, it slid, like it didn't belong to this gravity. Levi grabbed his rifle, aimed through the cracked window, and froze. The thing had no face, no body, just a cloak of shifting shadow and two small red lights where eyes should be. It was watching them. He turned to warn the girl, but she was already standing. Her skin shimmered faintly, and her body tensed as if every part of her sensed danger. "They found us," she whispered, "the trackers of the void." Levi's voice was tight. "Who are they?" She looked at him without blinking. "They don't want the third taken by your kind." Before Levi could respond, the power died. Total darkness swallowed the room, and something slammed into the roof above them. The whole outpost shook, as if something massive had landed. Then came the sound, an unnatural shriek that echoed from every direction at once. It wasn't a scream. It was language, ancient and angry. Levi grabbed the girl's arm and pulled her toward the lower hall. She moved with him, but her steps were slow, like part of her was resisting. "They're calling the third back," she said, in a trembling voice, "but it's inside you now." "And they can't take it gently?" he asked. "Then, how do I keep it?" She answered, "You can't. Not unless you bond with it." They reached the armory, and Levi sealed the steel doors. He leaned against the wall, breathing fast, sweat on his face. Outside, shadows moved like smoke, alive, thinking, hunting. The scanners blinked red, then black, unable to lock on to the intruders. The third heartbeat inside Levi pounded hard now, in fear or anger, he couldn't tell. The girl sat down beside him and closed her eyes. Levi stared at her, then asked, "What happens if they catch you?" She opened her eyes slowly and replied, "They will take me apart, piece by piece, to extract what they believe is still inside." "But it's in me now," Levi said. "Yes," she nodded. "That makes you their new target." Suddenly, something slammed into the door with a deafening thud. A thin black line spread across the steel, hissing and burning. Levi raised his weapon, heart pounding. The girl stood up and stepped in front of him. "No," she said firmly. "They're not here for a fight. They're here to make you surrender." "I won't," Levi said, voice sharp. She turned her head slightly, almost smiling. "You might be the first human who says that and means it." Then, the third inside him responded. It pulsed, burned, and sent a vision into his mind of a world long gone, and a war that erased its name. He saw beings like her. Hundreds of them, running, hiding, carrying the third deep inside. And Levi understood, wasn't just a power, it was a memory, a legacy. He opened his eyes and whispered, "I saw them." The girl looked surprised. "You saw there." And another slam came, louder than before. This time, the door dented, and something sharp slid through the crack. The girl stepped forward, lifted her hands, and her body began to glow again. "You must leave," she said softly. "There's a hidden exit. Use it." Levi refused. "Not without you." She turned to him slowly, her voice low and shaking. "If they take me, you'll still have the third, and that means hope lives." Levi looked into her glowing eyes. "I'm not leaving hope behind. Outside, the shadows howled louder, closer. And the final barrier cracked inside that small room. Two beings stood together, one alien, one human, both now tied by something the stars themselves had forgotten. Asterisk, the lights didn't come back. The outpost stood silent and broken, its walls shaking with every impact. Smoke slipped through the cracks, and the scent of metal and burning circuits filled the air. But Levi's focus was locked on the girl standing in front of him. Her back was to him, and that strange third shape was glowing again. Brighter than before. It hovered slightly. No. Longer stuck to her flesh, but floating, connected by threads of light. He didn't know what it was. Zorgan. Machine or something entirely different. It moved as if it could feel, pulsing with thought. Whispering without sound, she raised one arm, and the third responded, spinning gently. Then she said something Levi had never expected. "I'm not." "The original," she whispered. Levi blinked. "What do you mean?" She turned slowly, eyes glowing like stars behind fog. "My body is a shell, shaped like my ancestors. But I was built to carry this one piece." She looked at the floating third. "It is older than me, older than you, older than memory." Levi stepped closer, unsure if he was dreaming. "So it's not part of you." She shook her head slowly. "No, it chooses who to rest inside and who to trust." She took a shaky breath. "And now, it has chosen you." Before Levi could speak, the walls rattled again, and dust fell from above. The door was nearly gone. Now a hole torn in its side, shadows gathered like liquid outside, pressing in. But none dared cross the final threshold, not yet. They were waiting, watching, hunting with patience. Levi backed up and stared at the third floating between them. He could feel something deep inside himself, answering to it. Like a forgotten key turning inside a hidden lock. The girl knelt slowly and touched the ground, whispering words in a language Levi couldn't understand. The third pulsed faster, then slowly drifted toward Levi. He wanted to step back, but something inside him reached forward instead. It touched his chest and vanished inside. Melting like light into water, Levi gasped and fell to his knees. The world around him spinning, and then he saw, not with his eyes, but with his mind. A vision opened inside him, bright and terrifying. A temple of light floating in the middle of space, and inside, each rows of glowing figures kneeling before something massive. Something pulsing with the same glow now inside him. It was not a god, but it was treated like one. The third was a fragment of that being. A piece of something cosmic that had broken apart long ago. He opened his eyes slowly, trembling. The girl was beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder. "You saw it," she said softly. "The core mother." Levi nodded slowly, his voice barely a whisper. "What is it?" She looked up at the ceiling, where cracks of light spilled through broken panels. "The thing inside you now, it used to guide my kind," she said. "But it split itself, hiding in us, in hopes that one day someone would make it whole again." "And why me?" Levi asked, voice hoarse. "Because you're not like the others," she replied. "You feel pain, but keep going. You see fear, but still protect. You are chaos, kindness, and survival all at once." A sound cracked through the bass, different from before. Not shadow, not claw, but voice. A dozen voices layered into one, vibrating through the walls. "Return what was stolen," it said, "and your deaths will be quick." Levi looked at the girl. "They know it's in me now." She nodded slowly, her face pale. "They won't stop until they tear it out of you." He stood up and tightened his grip on his weapon. "Then we make sure they don't get the chance." The girl's third shape was gone now, fully inside Levi, but she still glowed faintly. As if her body remembered its presence, she whispered something into her hand, and a small orb of blue energy appeared. "Take this," she said. "It will guide you to the place the third remembers." "Where is that?" he asked. "Buried under sand, under war, under everything lost your kind built it long ago." The voices outside grew louder, angrier. The girl looked toward the ruined door and said calmly, "We need to run, but we're not escaping. We're going home." Levi nodded, and together they stepped into the tunnel beneath the outpost. Behind them, the base collapsed under shadow and fire, but ahead, somewhere deep in the forgotten part of the planet, lay the truth, the origin of the third, and perhaps the reason Levi had been chosen in the first place. The path under the outpost was older than anything Levi had seen on this planet. Stone walls curved downward into darkness, marked by strange carvings and soft blue veins of light. The girl walked beside him, quiet but alert, her hand resting near the glowing orb she had summoned. Every step echoed like a memory, not a sound. And the air grew colder the deeper they went. After what felt like hours, they reached a wall smooth, black, and too perfect to be natural. It stood alone, untouched by time, with no door or control panel, just silence. The girl stepped forward and placed her hand on it. Nothing happened. Levi moved beside her, staring at the wall. The third, inside him, pulsed, slow but heavy. Then he felt a pull, like his breath was being drawn out of him. The wall began to glow, and lines of light formed in strange shapes and balls, like voices frozen in stone. "You must speak," the girl said softly. "Only your voice can unlock this door." He frowned. "What do I say?" She looked at him. "You already know." Levi stepped forward, heart pounding. He didn't know why. But one word rose in his throat, one he had never heard before. "Uteron," he whispered. The wall shivered. The symbols lit up brighter, and the stone began to melt into liquid light. It slid away silently, revealing a large chamber glowing with soft, golden energy inside. It was not a room. It was a memory. Rows of empty thrones circled a large platform. Above them, a single beam of light hovered, and at its center floated something that looked almost alive. It was a shape not quite heart, not quite core, but it pulsed like the third inside him. Levi stepped forward, drawn to it. He could feel the connection, like he was walking toward an echo of himself. The girl watched him carefully, her eyes wide. "This is the core throne," she said, "where it all began." As Levi approached, the third inside him began to rise. It floated out of his chest and joined the glowing shape in the center of the beam. They spun together, faster and faster, until light poured from the platform like water. The air vibrated, and Levi fell to his knees. Visions flooded his mind, cities in the sky, creatures made of light, humans building something so powerful they had to hide it from themselves. The third was not a weapon. It was a seed, a part of a greater being that broke itself to protect the universe from itself. And now it had awakened inside Levi. The girl knelt beside him, her voice soft and distant. "You were always part of this," she said, "even before you were born." He looked at her, confused and shaking. "I'm just a scout," he said. She shook her head. "No, you are the answer to a choice made thousands of years ago." Suddenly, the chamber shook. The shadows had found them. From the tunnel behind them came the same layered voice, now filled with rage. "Return the third," it roared, "or we will unmake this place." The core throne began to dim, and the third pulsed violently. It didn't want to return. It wanted to become whole. The girl stood and pulled Levi to his feet. "We must finish the bonding," she said. "What does that mean?" he asked, fear in his voice. She reached out, touched his face, and whispered, "You let it choose you. Now you must choose it back." Light spilled from her hands into his chest. The third surged back into him, brighter, louder, faster. His heart stopped just for a second, but in that second, he saw everything. He wasn't just carrying it. He was becoming part of it, and in that connection, something ancient awoke. His voice changed, deeper, resonant. He turned toward the shadows, now breaking into the chamber, and he spoke not with fear, but with command. "You are not welcome," he said. The beam of light exploded, throwing the shadow creatures back like dust in a storm. The girl stepped beside him, her body glowing again. But this time, her third shape did not appear, because it was now fully inside him, part of a living force she had guarded all her life. The chamber began to collapse, the structure old and strained, but the path ahead opened, revealing stairs going even deeper. She looked at him, voice calm. "The next gate will test your will." Levi nodded, his eyes no longer just human. "We keep going," he said, "until it's done." The tunnel beyond the chamber was different from the others. It was alive, not just old stone or glowing tech. It breathed, pulsed, and watched them as they stepped inside. The walls moved slightly, like lungs, and every step Levi took made the ground shift gently beneath him. He looked down, unsure if the floor was solid or just pretending to be. The girl walked behind him now, quiet but tense. She had stopped glowing after the third returned to Levi's body. Her skin had turned pale again, almost gray, as if something inside her had been taken away. But her eyes still burned with silent purpose. She didn't speak, not yet. The air was thick and warm, filled with faint whispers that circled them but never settled. They said nothing clear, only broken pieces of language. Levi felt a pressure in his head, like a memory trying to return without his permission. Then the tunnel opened into a chamber, shaped like a spiral. At the center stood a figure, not living, not dead. It was frozen in time, tall and dressed in armor made of stars and black stone. Its face looked human, but its eyes were empty, and in its chest, a hollow space shaped exactly like the third. Levi stepped forward, but the girl reached out and grabbed his arm. "Don't touch it yet," she said, her voice shaking. "This is the guardian," she whispered. "It is what you must face." Before becoming the final bearer, he stared at the figure, confused. "It's just a statue," he said. But then it moved. The room darkened as the guardian's body lit with fire from within. Its eyes snapped open, and the hollow in its chest began to glow with heat. It turned its head slowly, locking onto Levi. "Chosen," it said, voice deep and layered. "Prove you are worthy." Levi stepped back, unsure if he should run or fight. "What do I do?" he asked. The girl whispered, "You let the third respond, do not force it. Let it speak through you." The guardian raised one arm, and black energy surged forward. Levi threw up his hands, and the third burst from his chest like a shield of light. The energy hit the barrier and shattered into dust. The guardian's eyes narrowed, and it began to circle Levi slowly. "You carry the core of memory," it said, "but memory is not enough. Will you protect it, even if it breaks you?" Levi didn't answer with words. The third pulsed once, then again, and light spread across the room. A storm of visions struck Levi's mind. Wars lost, civilizations erased, millions screaming into empty skies. He saw the first beings who carried the third. They all died trying to protect it. Every one of them gave their life before it could return home. The guardian stopped, watching him closely. Levi stepped forward, chest burning, heart shaking. "I'm not here to be a hero," he said. "I'm here because no one else came." The third reacted, glowing even brighter. The guardian raised both arms and knelt. The chamber stopped shaking. The whispers grew silent. The girl stepped closer, watching with wide eyes. "You passed," she said softly. The guardian's body turned back to stone, and a narrow staircase opened behind it. The next gate was ready. Levi turned to her, his face pale, sweat on his skin. "I saw there Deaths, he said. Every one of them. She nodded slowly. And now you carry their last breath. They walked together up the staircase. The tunnel narrowed, then opened to a room made of mirrors. Each mirror showed a different version of Levis, some smiling, some bleeding, some with alien scars across his body. But one mirror was missing a reflection. The girl pointed at it. "That is your future if you give up," she said. He stared at the empty mirror, feeling cold. Then the third pulsed again, and the mirror shattered. Glass flew everywhere. But not a single piece cut them. Instead, the pieces hovered in the air, forming a shape Levi hadn't seen before, a full form of the third completed. Whole, and floating between them, it spoke, not in words, but in emotion. It was ready to finish what began so long ago. Levi reached out and placed his hand on the shape. The girl did the same, and the room filled with light that had no color. Their minds connected, their memories linked. He felt her pain, her silence, her loneliness. Her long wait in the cold of space. She felt his confusion, his fear, his strange strength to keep moving even when lost. They stepped back as the third melted into both of them. Now it no longer belonged to one. It belonged to both. Together, they turned toward the final path, not just bonded, not just carriers, but something new the stars had never seen before. The sky above planet G57 was no longer still. A crack had opened far above the clouds. Not natural, not weather, but something ancient pulling the stars apart. It shimmered like broken glass floating in the sky, and from it poured dark shapes many. Massive, hungry. They came not just for the third, but for everything that remembered it. And Levi now remembered everything. He stood at the edge of the surface temple, the highest point on the planet. The girl stood beside him. Her eyes no longer teal, but white-hot like starlight. They had become something new, no longer just a human and an alien, not just carriers, but bondholders, and the third inside them wasn't silent anymore. It spoke without sound, through pulse and presence. Every beat in Levi's chest carried the weight of entire worlds lost. Every breath the girl took shimmered with data from forgotten stars. But none of that would matter if they failed now. The shadows were coming fast, and this time they would not ask nicely. A giant shape dropped from the sky, landing with a shockwave of dust and crackling sound. It wasn't a soldier, was a reclaimer. 10 stories tall, made of bone and silence. Its voice cracked the air like thunder. "You were warned," it growled. "Return the core or burn with your planet." Levi didn't answer. He stepped forward, arms at his side. The third glowed inside his chest, and symbols appeared on his skin, soft, golden, and alive. The girl walked to his side and lifted her hand. Between them, the air shimmered, and a shield of pure memory formed. The reclaimer swung its arm, sending a wave of shadow toward them. The shield broke, but not completely. Levi stepped through the damage and charged, not with weapons, but with will. His voice carried across the rocks. Not loud, but heavy. "I carry what you lost," he said. "But I am not here to give it back. I am here to finish what you abandoned." The third pulsed, and the sky above them cracked again. But this time, light came through white, endless. Real, it struck the temple, and the entire surface shook. The girl raised her arms, and the temple responded. Ancient machines humming to life underneath the stone. Old systems activated, she whispered. This was never just a vault. The ground split open, revealing a beacon tower rising from beneath. Its light shot into the sky, cutting through the black shapes like a sword. The shadows screamed, not in pain, but in confusion. The light remembered what they were before they turned, and it made them feel it again. Regret, fear, the moment before corruption. The reclaimer stepped back, trembling. Levi raised his hand, and the third floated from his chest. It hovered above them, Spinning, brighter than ever before, the girl spoke a single word in the forgotten tongue. And the third split into three once again. One part returned to Levi, one to her, and the third floated upward. It shot into the sky, piercing the great crack, and the stars began to heal. The darkness pulled back. The sky turned gold, and the wind finally sounded like wind again, not a scream, but a breath. Levi fell to his knees. Exhausted but whole, the girl knelt beside him, her face calm for the first time since they met. She smiled gently. "It's over," she said. He looked at her, confused. "Did we win?" She shook her head. "No one wins with the third, we simply survive it." He laughed weakly. "Well, we survived. For now." The world was still, but the beacon remained lit. And the third inside them never truly slept. It waited in case. The stars forgot again. Levi looked up at the sky that had almost ended. He had come to this planet to scan dust and collect rocks. Now he had saved the legacy of a forgotten race with a girl who was never really just a girl. He reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. Together, they stood where the light began again. Not heroes, not gods, but the only two beings in the galaxy who could say this simple truth: the third had chosen them, and they chose each other back.